Oh, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome all and good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Mark Cook, and along with Frances, who is tonight's presenter, we are two of three co-chairs of Elders Climate Action's Education Committee. Our third co-chair is Marianne Krasny of Cornell University. Instead of our more traditional monthly national calls, for July and August, ECA is offering this first workshop in a series of 3 workshops titled the Climate Activist Toolkit. The title of this initial workshop is Tools for Meeting with Elected Officials. If you made a financial contribution to support ECA and this series, thank you. If not, please consider doing so. ECA is a careful steward of its resources, including its finances. We do as much as possible with committed volunteers, but this still has its limits. So we appreciate your consideration and support of these efforts. A very quick aside, if you have questions during this presentation today, those questions will go in the chat box instead of the Q&A portion. I'm fortunate to introduce today's presenter and my education co-chair, Frances Stewart. Frances is a psychiatrist who practiced for 38 years, an integrative health coach, and retired U.S. Navy captain. She has served on the faculty of the University of Vermont and the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. In 2018, Frances retired from her position at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence in Bethesda, Maryland, and continues to serve as a volunteer physician with the American Red Cross and the Maryland Medical Reserve Corps. She also serves as a climate ambassador for Physicians for Social Responsibility and as a climate for health ambassador for ECA America. Besides our own ECA, Frances is an active member of several more organizations working to solve our climate crises. As part of that work, she has done advocacy and lobbying visits with US representatives and senators for Citizens Climate Lobby, Moms Clean Air Force, and the Medical Society's Consortium on Climate and Health. She has also done lobbying visits with Maryland delegates and senators for the Sierra Club, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, and Climate Exchange Maryland. In case you couldn't keep track, that was 9 environmental groups Frances supports. One more and she's in double digits. It should not be lost on anyone that Frances is not only a leader, she's also a generous team player. Thanks, Frances, and please take it from here.
Thanks, Mark. Jen, do we have a poll? Just to get a little bit of an idea where everybody's coming from tonight in terms of their experience with this topic. So if you could please check any of these things that you've done and then hit submit. We'll take a look and see where we're at.
We'll give it about 10 more seconds. All right. And the results.
Okay, so we've got an active group here. We've got 86% of people have called an elected official's office to advocate on climate. And many of you have also met with the congressional representative senator virtually or in person, or met with state and local officials. So this is not going to be new to many of you, but hopefully we'll give you some new ideas about how you might approach things. So Jen, if I can share the screen. Oh, yes, I can. Thank you. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint? And I'm
yes,
hoping it will not be death by PowerPoint. We'll try to make this useful. I think we all know that we're in a very important time as far as climate change is concerned. It's not just something happening in the future. You can't turn on the news without hearing about fires, floods, droughts, heat waves. And there's no reason to think that things are going to stay like this and not get any worse. On the other hand, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of opportunity for hope because there is so much happening all around us in people's individual lives, but also what we're doing collectively. There's so much happening on the federal level and on the state and local level. So it's really an amazing time to be an advocate for climate action. And there are many ways to be an advocate. And here we have listed at least some of them. They range from things you might be doing every day, like just talking to people you come across in your daily life, up through doing direct action. And all of these things can work together to move us toward our goals. What we're going to focus on this evening are phone calls and virtual and in-person meetings with elected officials. And I'm going to talk mostly about at the federal level, our representatives and senators, but all of those things also apply to meeting with your state and local officials. And many of it will apply to talking with people who are not elected officials, say someone who's the head of a business that we have concerns with. Now I'm going to encourage all of you to do much of your work with an organization. Our voices as individuals are important, but many voices together have a much greater impact. Also, it's just really tough to keep track of everything that's going on in Congress, in your state, in your local government, and on and on. Organizations like the Sierra Club, Citizens Climate Lobby, and the Union of Concerned Scientists all have staff who track what's going on, create appropriate messages, and plan actions as part of coordinated campaigns to help us meet our goals for climate action. Smaller organizations like Elders Climate Action also play an important role. We don't have the kind of staff the larger organizations do, but we have great partners that we can work with in those actions and helping our members to take action. Now, in taking these actions, it's important to be aware of the difference between advocacy and lobbying. You may not think of yourself as an advocate or as a lobbyist, but you can be either or both. A lobbyist is not just a guy in a suit who's paid by some big bank or corporation to influence members of Congress. You can be a citizen lobbyist going to talk to your representatives about what it is that you're concerned about, and what you think they need to do. Now, looking at the difference between advocacy and lobbying, advocates are focused on an issue and are requesting action on that issue. A lobbyist is also focused on an issue, but it's a little different. They're asking for joint specific actions on specific pieces of legislation. And there's some legal minefields. It can be really tricky for a nonprofit organization, especially a 501c3, like Elders Climate Action, to make sure they follow all the lobbying guidelines and don't do anything that would endanger their nonprofit status. So it's always important to be aware of the guidance from the organization that you're working with so that you don't inadvertently cause a serious problem. It's also important to remember that 501c3 organizations can't participate in political campaigns or endorse candidates. Let's start first at looking at making phone calls. If you're working with an organization like ECA, you're probably going to be getting action alerts or action bulletins asking you to do things like make phone calls to your members of Congress. Many of you all may have gotten an action bulletin last week asking you to call senators about electric school buses. Those action alerts frequently provide a script with suggestions as to what you want to say, and may provide you with a phone number or an easy way to get the phone number for your member of Congress. You don't need to follow the script exactly. We're all different, and we should customize what we're going to say to reflect us or reflect the things that we are most concerned about. And if you want, you can ad-lib that. Lots of people will take the script they've been given, rewrite it, and read it over several times. Make sure that they're really comfortable with it and they have it in their mind before they make a phone call. So do it whatever way works best for you. Now, if you need to find a phone number, there's several ways to do that. Many of us don't know who our representative in Congress is. No shame in that. If you need to find out, you can go to www.house.gov and find your representative. Also, we'll give you all their contact information. So even if you know them, they'll help you get the information that you need. Now, if you already know the name of someone you want to call, especially if you want to call a staff person in someone's office, the House directory is really helpful for that. The Senate also has their site at senate.gov. If you can't use the web or just don't want to for some reason, there's always the U.S. Capitol switchboard operator. And most local governments and all of the states have websites where you can find the information that you need to contact state and local officials and their staff. Now, when you're making your call, you can start out with something just brief about who you are. Generally, you're going to be calling your own member of Congress or your own senator. So make sure they know where you live and that you're a constituent, because constituents' voices are particularly important. Any elected official is going to be concerned with who's going to be voting for them the next time. So your voice as a constituent is important. You may also want to say things that sort of reflect your particular standing or your particular concern. If you are, say, the pastor of a church, or you're the owner of a business, or you're the head of the Chamber of Commerce, or you've been a healthcare provider in the community for many years, or even if you just want to look at from the point of view of being a grandparent, you say something about that at the beginning, and then you can read or recite your script. That's really all it takes. If you're calling during working hours, you can certainly talk to the office staff who answer the phone, but you may want to ask to speak with the staff member who deals with your particular issue. If that person's available, they'll probably put you through. If they're not, they'll probably help you leave a voicemail for that person. Other things you may want to do is to offer to be a resource for the official. That can be a good way to start to develop a relationship with an office, and also for them to get the information that you want them to get. As part of that, ask for an email where you can send the resources to them. It's also helpful if you call back in a few weeks. Starting a relationship takes time, and generally more than one phone call. Now, for many of us, it works best to call in the evening or on weekends. It's generally the easiest way to start. If you call in the evening or on a weekend, you'll probably go directly to voicemail and be asked to leave a message. If that happens, go ahead and say what you were going to say. Someone will listen to that message. It will be counted. It is important. For many people, that's the easiest way to get started. It's also very helpful if you just don't have time during the day, or if you work in a setting where it might not be appropriate to make the call from work. So switching gears again, let's talk about meeting with members of Congress. There are many ways to do that. We think about going to Washington and meeting in person. That can be a great way to do it. But certainly during the pandemic, virtual meetings became the standard thing to do. And they'll probably continue even if we do have more in-person meetings again. There also can be meetings in the district or in the state. Every member of Congress has one or more offices in their district or their state. And during the recess, like at the upcoming August recess, that can be a great way to meet with them without having to go to Washington. Now, if you're working with an organization, you may do this as part of lobby days, or even now with virtual meetings, lobby weeks. On a lobby day, I'll give you an example with Citizens Climate Lobby, there may be 1,000 or more volunteers fanning out in teams to meet with 400 or 500 offices in a single day. And that certainly can make an impression. Meetings with state and local officials are similar in many ways. Virtual meetings are now very common, but as hopefully the pandemic starts to wane, meetings in their offices will become possible again. Many organizations will hold lobby days, or at least in my state, lobby nights are particularly popular. You may also have an opportunity at town halls or other events. A town hall can be a great opportunity to talk to an official about your issue, and also that lets others in the community know about it and know what that person is thinking and is committing to do. So if you can, submit your question ahead of time. If you can't, you can still go prepared with a brief question. But if you do, make sure you listen carefully to what other people are asking, what's being said. You may need to change it by the time you manage to get your time with the mic. Now, if you're having an in-person meeting, you do need to do some preparation to have the best chance of a successful meeting. There are lots of different models for doing this that will vary slightly. The model I'm going to give you is based primarily on the approach that's used by Citizens Climate Lobby. I think it's an excellent approach. It's works very well. It's easy to learn, and you can use modifications of that in many other situations. So what you're going to want to do to start out is to meet your team, find out what information you need, and then think through what you all want to do during the meeting and make a plan. Now, if you're doing this with a group like Citizens Climate Lobby, your team is going to be ready-made. But suppose you're doing it with an ECA chapter or some other organization that doesn't have a ready-made team. Who do you want on your team? You want people who deeply care about your issue and hopefully your specific issue. Someone might care deeply about climate change, but not be all that interested in electric vehicles. So they're not the ideal person for your team if you're going to talk about an electric vehicle issue. You also want, if you can, to recruit constituents. Constituents will have the most powerful voice. It's good to have people of different ages and with a variety of backgrounds. One of the best advocacy meetings I've been in was one that Elders Climate Action did with Moms Clean Air Force. Our team for those visits included people range of age from 18 months through 80 years. And it's very interesting to see the effect on our members of Congress meeting with such a variety of people. You may also want to include community leaders, business owners, faith group leaders, other people who are prominent in the community may have a voice that will be particularly helpful. You're going to need at least a little information before you go in. You need a basic understanding of the issue you're going to be talking about and the actions that you're requesting, but you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have an expert on your team, but frequently you're going to. Also, the organization that you're working with often will provide training on the lobbying process or the advocacy process, but also on the specific issues and actions you're going to be working on. You also need to know something about the official that you're meeting with, because who this person is and what their background is does make a difference. Most of them will have a website that will provide a great deal of useful information. There's also a lot of other useful information you can find on the web. Other people on your team are frequently a great source of information. They may have met with this person before or had contact with them in other contexts. The organization may also provide you notes from previous meetings, and those can be tremendously helpful. Another thing you want to think about is your story. Our personal stories can have a tremendous impact. You may not have time to tell your story, but it's good to be prepared. If you're not the person on your team who's going to tell your story and that person gets sick right before the meeting, it's good to have someone ready to step in. Or there may be something particular about your story that turns out to be a perfect fit for something that comes up. Now, the next workshop of this series is going to focus on your climate story and how to best use it. So I hope you will all be here for that. Now, for any meeting, you need to know what your goals are. And your goals are going to be somewhat different depending on exactly what you're asking for and exactly who you're talking to. You're always trying to show your concern about the issue and your support for it. You always want to provide information and answer questions. It's also important to understand their concerns and what influences them. We're not just there to tell them how it is and what they're supposed to do. We need to understand where they're coming from and what might help move them in the direction we'd like them to go. It's frequently helpful to focus on developing a relationship, especially over time. You may not accomplish a great deal in one visit, but over time, sometimes you can create a productive relationship in places you would never expect it. Depending on the situation, you may be able to get a commitment for specific action, and that can be very helpful. It's also helpful to learn how to be a resource for them. It's great to be in a situation where they're looking to you for information or for help in other ways. And you want to move them along a continuum of support. You can think of it in terms of, on one hand, someone may be a strong opponent to your cause, another they may be a tremendous champion, and there are various things in between. Wherever they are on that continuum, you'd like to move them in the direction of being a strong champion. If they're already a strong champion, certainly celebrate that and support that and see what you can do to help. It's really important to be clear on your asks. It's quite possible to find yourself in a meeting and all of a sudden realize you're not entirely clear what you want the person you're talking with to do. That's an awkward situation to be in. Your asks are usually determined by the organization you're working with, and there may be varying degrees of flexibility in that. There's usually a primary ask, the one thing that you're most interested in having that person do. There may also be secondary asks, things that you would also like the person to do, or things that if the primary ask is just a bridge too far, you want to go with a secondary ask instead. And those asks may be used for everyone in the group. Imagine you're in a Citizens Climate Lobby Day where you're going to be talking to hopefully every representative and senator. So it might be that you'll have the same primary ask for every Republican senator. Or those asks may be more tailored to an individual. Now, once you've figured out some of those things, you can plan your meeting. It's always helpful to get to know your teammates. People are coming with a variety of expertise and perspectives that can be tremendously useful. Once you've met these other folks, you're going to choose your role, decide what information you're going to present, including personal stories. Decide if you want to send information to the office ahead of time. Sometimes sending read-aheads can be very helpful, but if you do, keep it brief and don't assume they'll read them because they're very busy. And even if they have good intentions, they may not have time. You need to decide what information to bring with you or to have easily available virtually and what to leave them. Generally, if you're going to be there in person, you're going to leave them with a one-page on your primary ask. But there are a variety of other things that you might use, like sometimes, especially in person, you might have a petition with hundreds of signatures from constituents in their district, or you might even have hundreds of letters. If you do, you definitely want to bring those in and leave them with them. You also need to decide clearly on your asks and then review the planned flow of the meeting so that everyone is on the same page. Now, working as a team, it's important to know what the roles are. I've got more roles listed here than most teams have team members. Now, there are two things about that. One is that not every role is needed in every meeting. Like if it's a face-to-face meeting, you are not going to need somebody for tech support. Also, one person frequently has more than one role. And I think all of these roles are pretty much self-explanatory, except for the lever. That's not a misspelled simple machine. The lever is the person who makes sure that you actually remember to leave the one-page summary of your primary ask, the 100 and some letters you brought, whatever it is you need to leave there, because it's very awkward to have gotten to your next meeting and realize that you still have the things that you intended to leave in the previous office. And having one person assigned to make sure that doesn't happen is tremendously helpful. Now, this is the structure of a typical meeting. Most meetings are going to last about 15 to 30 minutes. So it's important to know, where you're going with this. You're going to start with brief introductions of each person on the team. And then your timekeeper is going to ask how much time you have. Because even if you were scheduled for 30 minutes, things happen. You might not still have 30 minutes. Then you want to get to appreciation. Members of Congress, senators are human beings like the rest of us. And just like the rest of us, they generally are much more open and receptive when they perceive genuine respect and appreciation for what they do. Now, sometimes that's super easy. Maybe the person you're talking to has been a wonderful climate champion and just a general great person for years. Appreciating that person, but all you have to do is figure out which things you want to bring up. On the other hand, you may have someone who is a lot tougher for you to appreciate. But if nothing else, you can always at least appreciate that they're taking the time to talk with you. Then you're going to get to your discussion and make sure you do a fair amount of listening in that discussion. That you give them an opportunity to talk, ask them open-ended questions, find out more about where they're coming from. You want to make your ask and get their response. Don't let that get too close to the end because their response may involve a lot of questions or issues that you're going to need to deal with. You won't have time to do that. Now, questions may come up that you can't answer. That's perfectly fine. Just make a plan to get the information from people who have it, assuming it's not an unanswerable question, and to get that information to them. Then in closing, make sure you thank them and briefly run through the follow-up plan, what you're going to send them and approximately when. Now, we're always asking for meetings with the representative or the senator themselves, but it doesn't always happen. They may only bring the meeting briefly, or they may not be there at all. Remember one meeting not long ago where the representative wasn't in the meeting at all, but we met him out in the hallway after the meeting and had a brief discussion. But there will be people there, one or more staff people. And meetings with staff can be very, very useful. I know some people are experienced doing this who actually prefer to meet only with the staff. The staff members that you meet are usually the experts in that office on your issue. Their perspectives and their influence are very valuable. Because they're in that office every day. If you can understand where they're coming from, if you can make them an ally, that can be tremendously useful. In some cases, they're even the people who will be doing a lot of the writing on legislation that you may be trying to influence. Some things to remember. Please dress appropriately. That may seem like it would go without saying, but I've seen people make some significant mistakes on that. Pre-COVID, the advice was always to wear a suit and tie or the equivalent for women. During the pandemic with virtual meetings, kind of switched more to business casual. After COVID, I wish I could tell you what's going to be. One exception I would say is matching t-shirts can be very effective when you have a large group of people, especially if you're going to multiple offices and people just see your t-shirts all over creation. It's important to be on time. The team should try to meet at least 5 minutes before the appointment, either virtually on Zoom, if that's what you're doing, or outside the office. And respect their time. These are very busy people. It's important to plan for the timekeeper, not only to ask how much time you have, but also to give a signal 2 minutes before the end. And also stay calm and positive. Lots of people worry that they're going to get into a meeting with someone who's really going to be hostile and nasty. That's very rare. It's never happened to me. It's never happened to anyone I've talked to, although it's certainly not impossible. But remember that they work for you, especially if you're a constituent. And they really want not to alienate constituents. There's always possibility that you'll vote for them in the next election. So definitely stay flexible. Where I used to work, we call this semper gumby. Unexpected things will happen. I've been in a lot of these meetings, and I'm not sure if I've been in one yet, but everything went exactly as I expected it to happen. I remember having to make a detour to get to a meeting when the Sunrise Movement was doing their sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office. I've been in meetings where people we were expecting just didn't show up, meetings where somehow we weren't on the schedule. All of those things we found a way to make work. But staying flexible is tremendously important. There's an old military adage that sometimes is attributed to President Eisenhower when he was General Eisenhower, that plans are useless, but planning is invaluable. If you've done your planning, that will really help you when things just don't go the way that you expected them to go. And if you find out your planning wasn't quite as good as you would hope, you'll still probably be fine. You know, most of these meetings go very well. I've never seen one go truly badly. They've just gone from okay to very well. After the meeting, some things to consider. It's great to get a photo for use on social media. Always ask if it's okay to have the staff and or the member of Congress in the picture. Some offices will say, great. This isn't actually it was Senator Cardin's office and his staff person we met with. Some are, I'm sorry, Senator Ben Hollins. Some offices are kind of camera shy. Now, if you can still get a photo if you want just of your team and use that on social media if you want. And that can be helpful in kind of amplifying the impact of your visit. Make sure that you follow up with answers to questions and or any materials you said you're going to send. Leave a thank you card or send them a thank you email. You report on the meeting to your sponsoring organization. And if you can, if you don't have to rush too quickly to the next meeting, spend a few minutes debriefing the meeting. What went well? What did you learn? What would you like to do differently the next time? Okay, so we've got breakout groups coming up where you're going to get to practice some of this. In your breakout groups, you're going to plan a meeting. You and your team are going to meet with one of your senators to ask them to support strong climate action in the budget reconciliation process. And in your team, you're going to have at least 5 roles. You're going to need a team leader who's going to facilitate things, a timekeeper, the appreciator, the person who's going to tell their climate story, and the person who's going to make your primary ask. And then you're going to practice your meeting. You're going to ask one person in your breakout group to be the senator and just role play what happens. You're going to have about half an hour. I suggest you use about half that time to plan. You're not going to be able to do everything in detail, but that's fine. It'll give you a good start. And then role play the meeting. And this is all practice, it's all learning. So relax, be flexible, have some fun with it. And have a few minutes for some questions before the breakout group. If anybody has questions they'd like, if you would please put those in the chat.
Frances, there is a question in the chat. If you're a member of Congress that's already supporting your issue, does it really matter?
I think
and important for you to visit them.
I think if you can, there are some members of Congress who are so opposed that they just won't give you an appointment. Although if you look at a CCL lobby day, you're probably seeing over 80% of the members of Congress and senators. So you're seeing a fair number who are pretty conservative. But you're always hoping to move them along a little bit. If all you can do is move them from strongly opposed to not doing much one way or the other, that's still progress. And it may be progress that comes in little pieces. Also, you'll learn some things from doing that about, what is the opposition thinking? Always a helpful thing to do. Being a retired military officer, sometimes I think about the art of war and the importance of knowing your enemy. Now, these folks are not necessarily your enemy, but they are sometimes your opposition. And knowing what they're thinking can be very helpful. And sometimes you get farther than you would expect. I'm seeing one thing in the chat about the role of the appreciator. The appreciator is the person who is going to basically deliver the appreciative message that you all decided on about how it was so wonderful that you worked with this other senator to pass this important bill, or that you've been a climate champion for so many years and you do such great work. If you can be a little more specific, that's good. But or just, we really appreciate you meeting with us today, if that's the only thing you can come up with. Although usually you can come up with something tangentially related. Even people who are terrible on climate usually have done something nice for a park or something. Although some of the meanings trying to find it for some of these people get almost comical. But that's your prep work coming through. Any other questions right now? Okay, so let's give the breakout groups a try and see what you can convince your member of Congress or your senator to do. Great to see you all back. I hope that was a useful and interesting experience for you. Now, that really focused on meeting with members of Congress, but we also have been talking about telephone conversations. So also wanted to give you a chance to use what you learned, and a little bit different from what you just did. That was all role play. This is going to be actually using what you've learned here to make a call and do a little bit of advocacy. What we're going to do is we're going to make a call in support of the Reclaim Act. The Reclaim Act works with communities in over 20 states who have been dealing with the effect of abandoned mine lands since the 1970s. There was a law in 1977 requiring coal mining companies to reclaim mines when they closed. But the ones that were abandoned prior to 1977 have been pretty much orphaned. There have been some pilot projects working on them, but there's still a tremendous amount to do. The Reclaim Act would provide funding to literally reclaim those areas, but to do it in a way that is not just minimal, but which have real environmental and economic benefits for those communities. Economic benefits, not just during construction or the actual reclamation process, because there would be certainly benefits there, but also sustainable economic benefits with jobs that would be ongoing. Pilot projects have created new farms, wineries, state parks, a paint business, all kinds of different and creative things. And you might wonder, what does that have to do with climate? Well, it has a lot to do with just transition, that coal-dependent areas are being hit very hard by the transition away from fossil fuels. And we don't want to leave anyone or any communities behind. Reclaim has tremendous bipartisan support. It actually passed the House last year. Unfortunately, didn't get considered in the Senate, but it is still a live bill. It's being considered again this year. It has a good chance of passage. Now, if any of your groups were ambitious enough to role play trying to convince Senator Manchin on things, this would be a great example of common ground. So what we're going to do, and if anybody can't do this right now, you can do this later, but all you need is your cell phone or your landline to call 1-888-464-1997. You'll hear a script about Reclaim. Actually, it'll be the personal story of a woman in Kentucky whose life has been affected by all of this. So good example of a personal story. And then you'll be connected to your representative to leave a brief message. And please stay on Zoom, because once you've made your call, we're going to do some Q&A and a short wrap up. Any questions before we do that?
One question, if it's already passed the House, why are we calling representatives and not senators?
It passed the House in 2020. It's a whole new deal in 2021. They have to
So it has to
start
go
over.
again, okay.
So, yeah, I did check on that today because that is a really good question, but it is still, it hasn't been approved in the House again.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
So this number we're calling, is it for Senator Manchin?
No, the
Or-
number will, this is a number, this is one of the ways that organizations make this easy. This number is going to connect you to a number where a person will explain something about Reclaim and what it is we're asking you to do, and then we'll connect you to your representative.
And you said this was in 20 states, so if your state isn't part of this, will you,
No, wait,
are they all involved?
this is federal legislation.
Okay,
So we need support from from as many states as possible to get it through the House and then through the Senate. And I think it's a no-brainer that Biden will sign it. But we do need to get it. It has tremendous support, but there are bills that have tremendous support that never get passed. So we need to actually get it through. Any other questions? Okay, so
How does it know who our senators are?
it's going to
Or
be.
re-
I'm trying. It's been about 3 months since I did it myself, although I did check it today to make sure it's still working. You may have to tell it your phone number, but I think it's going to be able to tell from where you are.
Okay,
But it is we did this in a webinar I was on back in March, and I was amazed how smoothly it worked. So we'll see if I got lucky again.
So
Okay,
what, so the script will tell us what the Reclaim Act is.
Yeah, the Reclaim Act,
Okay.
it'll go over it. If for some reason anybody has a question, I'm going to be here on Zoom. You can hang up your phone, come back and ask your question, and then call again if you want to.
Can I just make a quick comment or suggestion?
Sure.
We actually, I was involved in a lobbying meeting with our representative last year, and we actually did bring up the Reclaim Act to her. We're in California. California wouldn't benefit from this, so it wasn't really on her radar. But we brought it up as this is something that all states should be supporting because it will help with a just transition.
Mhm.
That's a big issue that was important to our congressperson, is just making sure that the folks who have been in the fossil fuel industry don't get just left behind. So it's like, here's a way you can show support for the people who are going to be adversely affected potentially, and maybe help build support from other representatives who you need.
Yeah, it's really crucial to create new jobs in those areas. And this is going to do a great job of that. So, okay, so go forth and advocate.
Oh, Frances, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. Can I listen to the script and then decide whether I want to
Sure.
talk or leave? I'm feeling better about writing emails to everybody when I send off notes.
Yeah, you can
But-
certainly listen to it, and
Yeah.
at any point you can say, okay, I've done enough of this, and hang up. And then if you need to get connected with them in some other way, let me know and I'll help you do that.
Okay, no, I actually know our federal rep here. So, but you said it went through the House, so it is a senator. Okay, Marky.
No,
or-
actually, it needs to go through the House again because it went through the House in 2020.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. That's good to know. Okay. I'm going to just go ahead and call this.
And please put yourself on mute when if you're not talking to people on the Zoom call.
Can we make this call sometime later?
Sure,
and
just write
still
down
have this number good?
the number will be good as long as until the bill is passed. So just write down the number if you don't want to do it now.
Okay.
It'll also be in the slides when you get them tomorrow.
So I did it. I called and I left a message with Jackie Spears' office, and they were very nice and took my name and wrote it down.
Great.
I just called my representative and told him about the Reclaim Act. I left a voicemail.
Great.
Yeah. This is Mike from Oregon.
Mhm.
I called Peter DeFazio's office and left. They only had a recorded message, but asked for your contact information, which I did, and obviously passed the message. But it was very well coordinated, this whole effort. They
Great.
automatically knew who my legislator was.
Well, I forgot to mention the representative's name. It's Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
Oh.
Oh, great. Okay, it's looking like everybody has everybody's gonna make their call this evening, has made it. So any questions or comments about what we've been talking about? We've covered a lot of material.
May I go ahead?
Certainly.
Thank you. I'm in Portland, Oregon, but my phone number is a Colorado phone number. And so the question that I just got answered by connecting with Representative Blumenauer from Oregon is that it does indeed connect with your location, not your phone number. So that's an important thing to know.
That is good to know, because I had done it with a landline, so I wasn't sure about that.
No, I had the same experience. I have a DC phone number, but I got connected to Jamie Raskin in Maryland. So
And that's interesting, because I like the woman from Portland. This is Mike from Oregon.
Hi, Mike.
Albuquerque phone number, and yet they were able to find who I was. But you asked for a question. If I could just throw one out there, as part of the future workshops, are we going to be also, and I didn't remember the titles, talking about how we can apply similar techniques to more local people, like at city council or county commissioners or state legislators?
That's not something that is specific in the workshops. There is going to be one on letters to the editor and op-eds. Those tend to be more locally oriented. Sure. But it may be when we get through the workshop series, we really want to know there are all kinds of other things we could do. What have we not done that we should do next?
No, but the methods that you outlined certainly can be applied easily at all these different levels, for sure.
Yeah.
I've used it quite a bit at the state level, not as much yet at the local level, but I think that's coming.
Yeah, the local level, you mean? Yeah.
I think there's a lot going on in my county right now.
Well, there's a lot going on here in my little town of Florence on the coast.
Lynn, did you have a question?
I do, thank you. Let me put my hand down here. I was wondering how you did that. Like, are you going to show us? Because that's a great sort of action alert type of move, to be able to connect people like that with a phone number and give them a little script and they can just leave a message. I would love to know how you did that.
Well, how I did that was I used a number that the Abandoned Minelands folks at, there's several Appalachian organizations that put that together, used, but they did give me some information on how to do it. So anybody who wants that, if they would put their email address in the chat with a little note about that, so I'll know what it is I'm supposed to send you. I'll have to look up the details.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it'll be on, we're going to be able to access a recording of today's session. Do you send it out? Because it'll be on there, right? Yeah, I actually Googled the phone number. I didn't want to call. I'm very timid about just calling anybody. So I Googled it and it said it was Sierra Club. So they may be part of the whole. reclaim.
Oh, that's great, because
broad-
I'm a member, I'm a leader in Sierra Club, so I'll just ask them.
Yeah, but you can set this up other than through Sierra. So if anybody wants to do that, let me know and I will get you the details on that. So, any other questions right now or comments? Taking a look at the chat to see.
That was awesome.
Well, Mike again from Oregon, I do want to compliment the presenter and all that you've done. It's very comprehensive, and we will, I understand, get the slides in case we want to share that locally. Good.
Yes, slides will be coming.
And there, you know, I've had similar experiences over time, being an elder like all of us. Many of us have done this before, but you did present a lot of things that we have to reinforce and pay attention to. I appreciate that.
So
yes, second.
Likewise, I'll make a thank you for the same. And this has been wonderfully helpful for learning to transfer this over to social justice issues and elders for social justice group that I lead. And we need to create a bunch of stuff like this. So this is really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Well, thank you all for really participating and really being a part of this. And I hope you'll be coming to the following 2 workshops. And I think Mark has a few things to bring up as we close this evening.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think this was a lot of fun. I love the interaction that we have that we don't ordinarily get on our national calls. And I think one of the things we've learned, if nothing else, is that there are some smart people who make advocacy easy for us. And I think that was kind of an eye-opening thing that we can take away from today. So anyway, a huge thanks to Frances for her considerable work and for sharing her experiences. If you registered, you will definitely get copies of this information. So if not, if you didn't register, but somehow still got involved, we can work that out with you to make sure you get this information. Again, please consider a contribution if you haven't already made one. We hope you can join us for the next workshop. That's in 2 weeks on August 11th, also at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Mark your calendars. You will not want to miss either of our next 2 esteemed presenters. The title of the next workshop is The Power of Our Personal Stories, and Frances had touched on that. That's by Caroline Levine of Cornell University, who taught a class last spring titled Communicating Climate Change, and as we speak is working on a book about the role of the humanities in the climate crisis. So this concludes our workshop. Thanks all and have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.